Today's show is brought to you by locally owned and operated Highland Rim Speedway. Highland Rim Speedway is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year with great short-track, door-to-door stock car racing in a safe, family-friendly atmosphere. Visit their website at highlandrim.com. From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or visit them online at www.usamotorandmachine.com.
Hello everybody, welcome in. I'm Joe Williams and this is Pit Pass with my partner, my idol, my friend.
Your color coordinated
my color coordinated little brother,
and
Larry
this is
Woody.
Strictly coincidence. We didn't plan this before we came on, did we?
No, this is not something we'd planned on. I did not get the memo. Larry didn't send me the email, so my shirt's a little different, but everything else is kind of strange.
Interesting week of racing since last we met, hasn't it?
Very, very interesting. NASCAR, the Cup Series, of course, going to Martinsville, and lo and behold, Jimmy Johnson wins it. And in the process, Larry takes over the points lead by 2 headed to Texas.
Over Brad Keselowski, who I picked last week to win the whole thing, and now he's in second.
Well, that doesn't mean anything.
It's a close second, and we got 3 to go. And I think the big story, Joe, again last week out of Martinsville, may have not been who won and was up front, but who wasn't up front. Denny Hamlin had car trouble, dropped out. And again, like we said a while ago, I think that burning smell that wafted in from Martinsville was a smell of burning toast. Denny Hamlin. And poor Denny, that was his home track, and everybody thought that would be when Denny would really make a move and maybe surge to the front and maybe look back at the end of the season and say he won the championship at Martinsville. I think they'll look back at the end of the season and say Denny lost the championship at Martinsville.
Interesting part to that is his partner, if you will, over at Joe Gibbs, wound up finishing second. That's Kyle Busch, who made a last lap dive, it looked like, at the rear bumper of Jimmy Johnson. And to be honest with you, if he'd caught him and turned him, I don't think I'd have blamed him. It's Martinsville. That's what's going to happen to you. But Denny comes out, home track, one of his favorite places, running really well. Caution comes out. He comes down pit road. He's caught for speeding.
Yep.
Okay, I don't think so, but we got to live with it. He comes back, rear of the field, comes all the way, Larry, back to the front.
Yep.
Caution comes out. He goes to pit road. Bang. He's popped for speeding a second time. Larry, these are pros, and they're going too fast on pit road.
And with so much on the line, too. And again, Denny argued that he wasn't speeding, that, this thing's done by the scoring, the timing laps, that kind of thing, spaces on pit road. And they check these cars. They don't have speedometers in them like we do when you're driving 80 miles an hour down I-65 and they get you, Joe. But they do have RPM gauges on the cars, and they test the RPMs to equate to speeds, pit road speeds before the race, so they know how many RPMs equal whatever it is, 50 miles an hour on pit road. And so it seemed like it'd be a simple measure for the drivers to sit there, look at the RPMs, and don't go over that. But again, as you said, Denny said he did that and still got busted.
It's basically, it sounds like a simple mathematical formula. You just got to figure out the rear end gear ratio, the RPMs equals the speed, the distance, blah, 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 because they only check, as they explain, they check from point to point, not necessarily as you roll through. And on the second one, that's one of the things he was saying, guys, somebody recalculate just what's going on. And nobody could ever give him an answer.
Joe, I think, first of all, let's say it's a moot point because his car broke even after the 2 speeding penalties. But back to your point, I think these guys try to fudge a little. I think they try to guess where the times are and maybe speed it's like you zip right up to the school zone speed, stop, ease through it, and then you speed up again. I think the NASCAR drivers play at a little kind of cat and mouse game with the NASCAR speed cops, as you will, and I think sometimes they play it a little too close and get caught, and that may be what happened to Denny. But again, it's a moot point because you can't win a race if your car is sitting in the garage, and that's where I think Denny Hamlin's championships ended last Sunday at Martinsville.
Say, despite 2 speeding penalties, Denny comes back, he's running top 10, top 5, and all of a sudden the car just quits.
Yeah.
Long and short, it's a terrible electrical problem. And he's out of the race. As I said, his partner, Kyle Busch, goes on. Larry, can you imagine the frustration? You know, he's going to wind up having to go back to that sports psychologist again after this one.
Yep. Well, it's kind of like being in a nightmare where you're falling or where you're running for something and you're running in wet cement. Here's Denny Hamlin on his favorite track, hometown track, championship on the line, and he's flying around the track, and all it was his car goes slow. You know, and he can't figure out how to make it go faster. As I say, it's kind of like being trapped in a nightmare, and all the other cars whizzing around him, flying around him, and finally, you know, he has to go to the garage and look and try to see where the gremlins are, and I don't guess they really ever got figured out. Some gizmo broke or pulled loose or something.
Where's the gizmo go?
It's under the whatchamacallit.
Oh, okay, I know where that goes. I know where that's at.
But no, it's kind of a tough way. And as we said earlier, Joe, that's what makes this sport so unique, because that doesn't happen in any other sport. You know, Denny's doing a good job driving, despite, you know, some of the pit road speed glitches. The crew, you know, got him in and out of the pits. Everybody did their job, in other words. And it's like in football, if the quarterback drops back and the line is blocking, he's got good pass protection, the receiver goes down the field, makes a fake, breaks wide open into the end zone, and the quarterback's just got to flip him the ball, but the football explodes in his hand before he can throw it. That's got to be so frustrating for these guys, for Denny Hamlin to think he's got a touchdown and the car blows up.
What about this one? Following along that line, one of his crew chief had a red challenge flag that he could have thrown.
Tossed it on the track.
And tossed it out on the racetrack, and NASCAR had to stop and go back and review whether or not he was speeding.
Well, it might come to that. Who knows? We're seeing things now that 30 years ago I didn't think we'd ever see in the sport. So we might see NASCAR penalties being challenged at some point.
Not as long as NASCAR is controlled by one family. That's not going to happen.
There's only one flag, and NASCAR has the flag.
And, yeah, that's right. And they keep the flag to themselves.
Yep.
Now, that was not the only race at Martinsville this week. Truck race Saturday afternoon. Larry, they got into the pushing and shoving, and of all people, Denny Hamlin, driving a Kyle Busch Motorsports truck, wins the race. It wasn't what happened at that part of the front of the field, because Denny, of course, an interloper, as we sometimes call him, going down to run in the truck series. But the guys who were running for the championship had quite a battle going. The points lead changed in the Camping World Truck Series as Ty Dillon, but not because he got hit, but kind of the same thing to an extent that happened to Denny Hamlin. Blew a right front, hits the wall, breaks a sway bar. He's done. He winds up having to give up the points lead, finished 28th.
And again, through no fault of his own.
Yeah.
Something broke.
Yeah, just tire goes
the football blew up.
Yeah, exactly. Literally in this case.
Two thoughts on that. First of all, I love the truck series. These are the throwback guys who race not for the big paydays and the glory and the glamour and that kind of thing. They don't get a whole lot of attention compared to the Cup guys. And secondly, I wondered why Denny Hamlin was out there. I mean, he's got so much on the line the next day to run the big race, the Cup race, and then the truck guys are wild and crazy. Anything can happen, and usually does. One spin, one beat, one bang, Denny's got a broken wrist, ankle, whatever, and can't run the next day, and the championship goes out the window of his truck. I wondered about the wisdom of that to start with, but again, as we said before, these guys race. If there's a race, these guys won't in it, but I was just, with so much on the line in the Cup race the next day, I just wondered if it was really wise for Denny to go out there, and who knows, maybe he used up his luck in the truck race, and it came around and he couldn't make a doubleheader that weekend.
James Boucher leaves with a 21-point lead. Last note from Martinsville in the trucks, Nelson Piquet Jr., if you remember, his dad, of course, drove great on the old IndyCar series and some other places, finished second after what some people called bold moves, others called stupid moves.
I remember.
But isn't that like a driver?
I remember when the sport used to be about bold moves,
yes,
or stupid moves, as you say. Yeah.
Yeah. It's either bold or it's stupid.
Right.
I'm not sure. One of us is bold and one of us is stupid.
My driver is bold. Your driver is stupid.
Sounds good to me.
Simple to remember.
Okay, well, stupid here says we got to pay a bill or two. So we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back with more on Pit Pass.
Microcasting for your city. Talkapolis.
Today's show is brought to you by locally owned and operated Highland Rim Speedway. Highland Rim Speedway is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year with great short track door-to-door stock car racing in a safe, family-friendly atmosphere. Visit their website at highlandrim.com.
Microcasting for your city. Talkapolis.
And welcome back, everybody. Segment 2 of Pit Pass. I'm Joe Williams, along with my idol, Larry Woody, who actually has wardrobe duties this week. He's kind of
our fashion coordinator got together before the show.
It's kind of a thing.
Yeah.
We got to get you back through makeup next week. Hey, they ran again Saturday night Highland Rim. We told you last week that they were going to, and they did. And another big night. Bobby Joe Rippey. Bobby Joe's been racing around here forever in Middle Tennessee at, well, I guess you can't count the number of tracks right now, but he wins the big 50-lap super stock event. Now, he was leading, but he was passed first by Bryce Crabtree, then by Matt Fuqua. Fuqua goes around Crabtree, and that's where they finish 1, 2, 3. Unfortunately, after the race, of course, the top three wind up in what is sometimes known as the room of doom, gloom. It's not really that bad, but it's called post-race inspection. And unfortunately, the top two did not meet the rule qualifications required. Something was wrong somewhere. Bobby Joe Rippey picks up the win. Brian Frazier winds up second. Matt Barnes third. Walt Watkins, Eddie Taylor. Big Eddie Taylor round out the top five. Larry, disqualifications for an infraction after a big event. Good or bad?
I detest disqualifications, and I think it cheats the fans, and it's the nature of the beast, as we said there earlier about the cars breaking when you got the race won. Joe, they've got to figure out some way when the fans sit there, buy the tickets, sit there all afternoon or all night, watch these races. When they go home, they've got to go home knowing who won the race. And I don't know. I'm not smart enough to figure it out. Now NASCAR's figured it out on the upper level. They don't disqualify, take the win away from somebody. They may penalize them points the next day for an infraction or something, but they don't take the win away. And again, there's got to be a better way, because again, it cheats the fans. If they go home thinking that Joe Williams won the race, and 2 days later the track announces no, Larry Woody won the race, Joe's carburetor was the wrong color. So they've got to figure this out, and I just cringe, because all my years at the Tennessean, we'd wait down there, as you know, sometimes till midnight, 1 in the morning, waiting to see who won the race, and then sometimes we wouldn't even know after that. If you think about it, Joe, again, this is the nature of the beast. I know it's tough to compare apples, oranges in sports, but when you go to a Titans game and you sit there all afternoon and the scoreboard shows one team won the game at the end of the fourth quarter, and the fans go home, 2 days later the NFL doesn't announce that they've reviewed things and there was a penalty that wasn't called, and they've reversed the order and the Titans didn't win. The Buffalo Bills actually won the game Sunday. That doesn't happen in other sport. The same way with college football, when the final score is on the scoreboard and posted and the fans file out and go home, they can say Joe Williams won that race. They don't have to wait for a day or two and say, well, maybe he won the race. And again, I don't know how to solve the problem, but it is a problem. As far as calling the races, I think, Joe, on this level, Highland Rim, the fairgrounds, those racing on that level, I think there needs to be more of a gray area and a little more room for rules interpretations, because these are not professional mechanics and crew chiefs and engineers and that kind of thing. Most of these guys build their cars in their garage and out under a shade tree in their backyard. I think you've got to grant them a little leeway. These are not Sprint Cup mechanics, and they don't have 50 engineers aboard like Rick Hendrick and Richard Childress, those guys do. Cut them a little slack. Call it, like we say in basketball, call it the same way at both ends, but give everybody a little more leeway in the rules on this level.
You just made about 400 race car drivers as happy as they could be, and 20 promoters will be here to burn this place down next week.
Well, the promoters, I think it would serve the promoters well too, Joe, because it doesn't help build a fan base. If you have this, I remember back in the old days at the fairgrounds, it was a constant squabble, and we'd go weeks, sometimes maybe the first 2 or 3 drivers in the order of finish might be disqualified, and it might be 2 or 3 days later before we knew about it. I don't think it serves the fan base well to have this kind of uncertainty and kind of the constant controversy and bickering and complaining constantly swirling around. Now, a little controversy is okay in any sport, but you need to know when the fans leave who won the race.
As you say, controversy will sell tickets.
Yeah, but it's not too much to ask when you leave the track, who won the race? That's a pretty simple question, and I think promoters have got to figure out some way to answer it.
And how much of this comes from all those years of standing? As a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember, the first time I met you officially, I think I was 12 and covering the race for a local radio station, and we stood outside the old bullpen down at the fairgrounds probably till about 1:30 after Jerry Sisko had protested Sterling Marlin, and we had to wait until both cars cooled down and they could get to him to figure it out.
And again, my point is, I don't care if Sisko won or Sterling won, just tell me who won.
Who won? That's what you wanted to know.
Yeah, make a call. Don't go back and forth. And again, Joe, I'm not mechanically inclined. I can barely gas my own car up at the filling station, self-service pumps. But there's got to be some way, I would think, to check these cars before they get on the track. And if they're legal when they get on the track and they win the race, then give the trophy to the guy who got there first and everybody go home. But it's been a pet peeve for 40 years, and the older and crankier I get, the more peevish I get. When you see one day this guy won it and the next day, no, another guy won it.
Larry Woody, old and cranky never.
Peevish, you left out peevish.
Yes, I'm sorry, peevish. Speaking of folks who also finished first, got there first, Mike Barrett beat Jeff Igdon in the late model feature. Tommy Clymer grabbed the sportsman win. Zach Evans, Justin Martins, Justin Dickens, Terry Jackson, Zena Jenkins, Chris Crutcher, and Ronnie Binkley all won races Saturday night at the Rim. I think they ran 10 or 11 classes.
And those are some pretty prominent names you rattled off there. Climbers, Binkleys.
Yeah. Start here. Just different first names because it's another generation.
Yep.
One of the other things you can get ready for this Saturday night, that's November 3rd, the Rim runs, yes, again, in the Fallback Series. Of course, we get an extra hour's sleep or an hour, do whatever you want to Saturday night. That's November 3rd, a 50-lap Pro 4 modified feature heads the card. 9 other classes running. They start racing at 4 o'clock. That way they at least get you out of there.
Weather ought to be good that time of afternoon too. Get you out before the nightfall and cold weather.
Yeah.
For you older guys who need to get home early.
No, I ain't going to. So no, I'm not going to say it. Tell you what I will say. We got one more break to take. We're going to come back and wrap this up. Some notes to go through that you're probably going to find. If you thought the disqualification response from Larry was interesting, you don't want to miss this next segment. Come back to see us here on Pit Pass.
From the family grocery hauler to fire-breathing racing engines, the one name you need to know is USA Motor and Machine, located at 51 Cleveland Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee. Give them a call at 615-726-3725 or visit them online at www.usamotorandmachine.com.
Microcasting for your city, Talkapolis.
Welcome back, everybody. Final segment of edition number 2 of Pit Pass. My idol Larry Woody sitting here with me. I'm Joe Williams. As we make our way through another afternoon, Larry, of sharing some news and having some fun. Some notes to close out with. This week, Sprint Cup cars, Nationwide cars, and the trucks all go to Texas.
Yep.
Everything's bigger and better in Texas.
And we have a association with Texas Motor Speedway.
One of the reasons it's bigger and better is their general manager, vice president, Eddie Gossage. And everybody knows Gossage. Gossage has become the heir to the Humpy Wheeler mantle.
He learned it to hump his knee, promotionals. Eddie got his start in sports in the old Tennessee Sports Department. And also he was going to MTSU at the time, working part-time, and needed more work. So Gary Baker gave Eddie a job out at the old fairgrounds, doing some PR, marketing, and that kind of thing. Eddie did such a good job that Gary moved him to his track at Bristol. Bruton Smith bought the Bristol track, recognized what a great job Eddie was doing, moved him to Charlotte, and then when Bruton built the new track in Texas, he moved Eddie there to oversee the construction and the operation of it, and the rest is history, as we say. One of the world's biggest sports venues, and our buddy Eddie Goose Gossage is running it. and a great guy.
Oh, he is.
Great
He is.
guy.
And Eddie is also a member of the Middle Tennessee State University Mass Communications Hall of Fame.
Yep.
Don't know why I would know that, but hope they have a good time. You know it's going to be good. If Gossage has got anything to do with it, you know it's going to be a lot of fun for the fans no matter what happens on the racetrack. Speaking of racetracks, Larry, we've talked about the Truck Series before and NASCAR needing to do some things to rejuvenate that Camping World Series. Rumor is out that Tony Stewart almost has NASCAR convinced to bring a truck race to his racetrack at Eldora, Ohio. Oh, by the way, did I mention it's one of the most storied dirt tracks in all the history of racing?
Well, if you want to rejuvenate something, that would rejuvenate it, wouldn't it? A truck race on dirt.
On dirt. I'd pay to see it.
Oh, millions of people will pay to see it. Well, either millions won't be there to see it, but they'll certainly watch live on television to see it. So no, I think it's a great idea, and it's something kind of out of the box. I like that idea. Instead of just running predictable races on predictable tracks by predictable drivers, try something new. Put the trucks on dirt. I'd say put Nationwide on dirt, and I'm almost to the point say put the Sprint Cup guys on dirt.
Well, they've run on sand and dirt before.
Sure. Try something different.
You know, that's retro.
Take them back to the Daytona Beach and turn them loose up and down the beach for a while, and that would shake things up. Because the worst thing in the world is monotony.
Yeah.
For any kind of sports event. That's why the NFL's tried to jazz pro football up with making the offense more offensive, if that's the right term. And NASCAR needs to put more racing in its races, and so and something new and different and unusual. We in the media, as you know, we love something different. We get bored quickly. Things get old and stale. And something like that, like you say, I think it's a great idea to put the trucks on dirt, and I'm dead serious about maybe putting Nationwide and the Cup guys on for a shot. I'd rather see that than the road races, frankly.
Well, the last great experiment I think they did with the Nationwide Series was taking them to the road course in Mexico, which lasted for about 3 years until they couldn't find honest security to get them there safely.
It's one of those things that sounded like a good idea at the time. But
sure it did. Yeah, and the federales are going to escort you in.
I heard there may still be some guys down there that hadn't made it back yet. A couple of years later,
a good possibility.
But, no, and interestingly, Joe, you're probably aware of it. Back in the summer, there's a rumor swirling around that Tony Stewart might be interested in Nashville Super Speedway out at Gladeville. He's been there quite a few times testing. Says he likes the venue, but apparently those rumors kind of fizzled out. And it looks like our Nashville Super Speedway, 11-year-old track, which is state-of-the-art track, great track, may be sitting idle again next year.
You know, the interesting part about that is, Larry, I think with NASCAR removing the restriction on testing, that's really what folks don't fully understand sometimes is that when NASCAR went in and said you can no longer test on any track that hosts an event, the testing revenue that Nashville lost, that Memphis lost, that some other places lost, is really what caused the demise.
Added to it, certainly.
Yeah.
It certainly didn't help. But it's a wonderful old track, and I'll keep hoping somebody will come in and pick it up and run with it, but I don't know, Joe. The longer it sits there, the more dismal it gets. And, you know, if Dover couldn't make it go, could anybody else make it go? Because they're an experienced NASCAR operator, run the 2 Cup races, you know, for 40 years up in Dover. And if they couldn't make a go of it, I'm not sure anybody could. So kind of a dismal story.
Let's try to let's find something a little more upbeat. How about
more upbeat? Dale Jr. came back at Martinsville, and despite some concerns, myself and other people, some trepidations about it, he did pretty well. Got caught up in a late crash, and a lot of us held our breaths because we were afraid that's exactly what happened. A guy coming off a 2-week set out to recover from a concussion, if you can recover from a concussion in 2 weeks, climbs back in a stock car and goes out and smacks against the wall. Or some other cars, you know. It's like we said last week, Joe. If Junior are going out to go bowling or play tennis or badminton, that's fine. But to climb in a stock car and go stock car racing while you're still in the process of recovering from a concussion, I wasn't convinced it was a good idea, and frankly, I'm still not. And I'm really not convinced it's a good idea with going to Texas this weekend with those breathtaking speeds that the Junior and the rest of the guys are going to be running on that track.
Texas is the one that scares me a little bit. I got to be honest, because it is so blistering fast.
If you hit the wall at Texas, you feel it.
Oh,
it leaves a mark, as they say.
I've seen a couple hit the wall at Texas that I felt.
Yeah.
Nowhere near the car. Last note of the week, it's good to hear good news about Sterling Marlin. The bad news is he wound up finding himself diagnosed with Parkinsonism. It's
Not
kind
to
of
be confused
with Parkinson's
Right.
disease. It's kind of the same. The difference is medication can handle all the symptoms, and he's back to 100%. And Larry, that's great because you know he's going to be a granddad again here for long.
Yeah. And I talk to Sterling every now and then. We still stay in communications. And you talk about a man who's at peace with himself. You know, a lot of guys walk away from sports that's been their life for so many years. Joe Sterling spent, 30-something years in it. And a lot of people can't walk away from it. It's two-time Daytona 500 champion, been there, basking the glory, national fame, all that. Sterling walked away from it. He said, "No, that's it for me. I'm going back to my farm in Murray County," and he's perfectly content to ride around on his tractor and his bush hog and play with his grandson. So I'm glad Sterling's having as I say, he's at peace with himself.
And
had a
races,
great career.
well, and he races enough to be happy. He still races a couple places around here.
And he's healthy too. You know, the story broke on the internet this past week about the ailment, and Sterling quickly said, "No, this is not Parkinson's disease. This is something different." As you said, a little related, but not the same, and it can be treated with medication. So Sterling's in good shape.
And he's still one of the biggest University of Tennessee fans you will ever find.
And still one of the nicest guys and most down-to-earth guys for a major sports celebrity that I've ever known.
Well, that was one of the great things in the interview that did go on the internet. They used some quotes, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, yeah, they've talked to him.
You almost had to know Sterling.
Yeah, if you know Sterling, it makes perfect sense.
You could hear those quotes.
Oh, yeah, you can hear it coming right out of his mind.
Remember, this is a guy who won the Daytona 500, came back to his farm the next day and almost got food poisoning from a quick sack hot dog that he ate on the way to work the next day after winning the Daytona 500. So with Sterling, what you see is what you get. Right.
And that's kind of the way we are, at least we hope to be. What you've seen is what you've got, and that's going to wrap up the second edition of Pit Pass. So glad you could come along and join us. Don't forget, you can leave your comments too whenever you get good and ready at facebook.com Pit Pass Talkapolis. There's a slash after the com, by the way. You probably see it there on the screen before we're done. Larry, got to say a great big thanks to USA Motor Machine for helping us and being a part of the program. Back next week.
Wear your pink sweater next week.
Got you, boss. For Larry Woody, I'm Joe Williams. We'll see you next week on Pit Pass.
Microcasting for your city. Talkapolis.